John Lund Unleashed. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny. John Lund Unleashed. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny. John Lund Unleashed. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny. John Lund Unleashed. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny. John Lund Unleashed. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny. The most fun you can have with your pants on. The most fun you can have with your pants on. Here's Johnny.
Yes, thanks for joining us as we are on our maiden voyage. We are on our maiden voyage for a lot of different platforms that we are on today. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So we are on our normal with all of our good friends who are here today on YouTube, as we always are. John Lund Unleashed. Please make sure that you are subscribing to the show and make sure also that you are joining the podcast as well, which we hit a button right after the show, and we do that as well. We got a ton of stuff to do today, but if you're on Twitch and you're watching, you are on Twitter/X. Yeah, I know. I don't know, man. We're getting some feedback here. So Twitter I don't know. We're getting some feedback here, but we'll make sure that we figure everything out. But it is great to have you aboard on that maiden voyage where we do all those things. We've got a ton of stuff to do today. We will get to a lot of 49ers stuff as I put on the cover of the show today. Right there. Decisions, 49ers bingo, the cost of Brock Purdy, decisions by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, extension for George Kittle, the future of Deebo. I think it's pretty safe to say that Mooney man Ward is gone. I would imagine that. The health of Christian McCaffrey. Fired is Brian Schneider, as we talked about yesterday. Had no choice. They were so bad on special teams. Brian Schneider's been around a long time. I know he's a good special teams coach, but he had a terrible year. There was nothing they could do. Will Nick Sorensen be next? And of course, the what the fuck that is, Jake Moody. So a lot of decisions to make for the 49ers, and they will continue today. As right away, Sports Girl for Life says, why isn't Sorensen gone already? And I will address that in 2 minutes. I'll address that in 2 minutes because there are way too many. I'll tease to this. There are way too many qualified and really good defensive coordinators out there for Nick Sorensen to survive. Kyle Shanahan did give us a bit of a hint because he said that he would be addressing this later this week if he was going to keep. I would say this: if he was going to keep the current defensive coordinator, I do not think that he would have announced at that particular point that he was going to stay. So that is probably good news. If you want Nick Sorensen gone, nothing personal, Nick. It's just they've got to be better. So here's what I'm going to do. We got a ton of stuff. If you are new to the program, and let me take the cover down because I just wanted to show you what we're going to do today. Episode 27 is today. 49ers locker room cleanouts. Will play the audio from all those guys. 49ers bingo, which is what I just showed you. Schneider is out. He's the special teams coach, Brian Schneider. That is no surprise, no choice. The Warriors are back tonight against the Heat. Jimmy Butler is not around, but they're not trading for Jimmy Butler, as I told you days ago. Anyway, we didn't play the Draymond Green stuff from over the weekend, and it's Tuesday because we had so much Niners to discuss from the end of the season. So we'll get into Draymond Green over the weekend a day late. Jonathan Kuminga, we didn't address that yesterday with the injuries. Trade talk, of course, which we'll get into because all these names get thrown up against the wall. And then yesterday it was, well, I don't think they're going to trade for anybody. I have Jack Flaherty / Pete Alonso news that you might like, but I'm not so sure. And then the sweet, clean, family-friendly Caboose pistol. I'm not sure if you saw this yesterday. You may have, but I'll play the video for you of the guy who got stuck in the Waymo car. And that's always the thing is I have yet to be in a self-driving car, but the worst nightmare is this guy's stuck in going around in circles. And I actually saw this in Scottsdale. We were sitting at dinner at a really nice joint, and we're sitting outside, and all of a sudden this Waymo is just going in circles and circles, and people are trying to avoid the thing. And it was in like a circular area where you would pick somebody up, and the Waymo just kept going in circles, and everyone's like, I don't know what to do with this whole thing. So I've actually seen that before, but we'll do that. And there's a great airplane story, which you're like, why do people act crazy on airplanes when it's just like, okay, we're just going to start acting crazy on an airplane. So we'll do that as well. But again, make sure that you are subscribing to the channel at John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. We're going to do this every day, weekdays, 8 a.m., And as people know, I am late. But to my regulars, which, by the way, I'm going to shout everybody out as I always do, because we're on a number of different platforms now and they have to, like, collaborate together, you're going to like this. I can't really be late because I set it at a certain time and it just fires. And so if I'm not here and I kind of put it at 8:01, but, you know, it's like 8:01, 8:05, 8:08, you know, whatever, I'm usually late. I mean, I got things going on, and I'm just doing it for you, but now I got to get up a little bit earlier because it just, at 8:01, it just fires. And whether I'm here or not, like, you're going to see an empty chair at some particular point because it's just like, we're firing, we're going. If you're not here, that's your problem. So anyway, yeah, that's some of the stuff that's going on today. On the chat line, which I got all the chat lines, so if you're on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter, I got it all in front of us. Walter is here, our good friend, which I'm going to be on his baseball podcast, I think, today. I can't remember, Walter. Make sure you let me know. But Jacob is here. AJ Cruz is here. Frisco native 415. By the way, this screen is a lot better. Greg is here today. Uncle Leo is here today. Did I mention Jesse, Sports Girl for Life? Already asked a great question about Nick Sorensen, which we'll get to in a second. Pine Needle was here early. You know, it was here early. There's people. Enrique was here early. It was unbelievable. By the way, we were doing trials at about 2:15 in the morning this morning. And we were going, you know, just fake live, and we didn't think anybody was going to be around. And was it you, Enrique? At like 2:15 in the morning, he's like, I have insomnia. And it was like we had one guy in here, and it was like, nobody's supposed to be in here. We're just kind of faking this thing at 2:15 in the morning. So anyway, that's what's going on as far as everything is concerned. And it is great to have everybody. Make sure that you're subscribing at John Lund Unleashed, your favorite podcast. And now you can get us on just about every platform. All right, I'm going to make you feel better. I'm going to make you feel worse, and I'm going to make you feel better. All right, so first and foremost, these are just remnants I have to get out of my system so that I can be a contributing member of society. I just have to get this stuff out of my system. Maybe this is just totally weird, and maybe it's just how you're thinking, but I'm a fan too, so I want to show this to you, and then we can commiserate. Then I'm going to make you feel good, all right? So bad news first, good news second. It's not really bad news. You already know it, but check this out. So I know this is like masochistic because you don't want to look at this anymore, but still, isn't that weird to just look at? Like, I'm not saying the Eagles at 14-3 or the Lions at 15-2, but I mean, look at the 49ers at 6-11. Isn't that weird? Like, I was looking at this yesterday, and the Carolina Panthers suck. They had a couple of decent games this year, but you were one game better than the Panthers. One game better than the Saints. I mean, the Saints had a bunch of crap sandwiches this year in games. It was like they beat Dallas early, and we thought they might be something, and then they were terrible. One game better than the Saints. One game better than the Panthers. One game better than the Bears. I know, we don't need to revisit this, but I was just flipping through Twitter yesterday, and I was like, my God, man, and injuries, and we've talked about it a million times. I'm only going to make you go through this a couple of times just because it was kind of end-of-season stuff. But for the love of God, man, look at that. All right, I'll get that out of your face. Second of all, this was Vegas. This is a kind of a neat, well, no, it's not. So this was the win total versus what you actually won. So red is bad, green is good. So you look at the 49ers there. They were projected to win 11.5 games. I think I probably had them at 13. But theirs was 11.5. So the only two teams that were as bad as far as 5.5. So they're obviously 11.5 minus 6, even though I was told there was no math on the show. But 11.5 minus 6 is 5.5. The only other teams who matched that, the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers, who was just atrocious on and off the field, 10.5 down to 5. And I think Cleveland was the other one. Yeah, Cleveland 8.5 down to 3. So, and I haven't looked at the injuries as far as the Jets and the Browns are concerned. I mean, everybody has injuries. Nobody had as many as the 49ers. But look at that, 5.5 games under the projected total to join the Jets and the Browns. Do I have one more bad one? Okay, this isn't really bad. Like, people are going to think this is bad, and this is going to happen all offseason. He's coming back. No, he's not. Yeah, he is. No, he's not. So this morning, let me look at this. This is Fred Warner's wife, and there was a video up, and Fred's in it, and his wife's in it, and all that kind of stuff. And it says, POV, your team didn't make the playoffs, and the NFL free agency is taking your best friend to another team, and we are severely unwell. So obviously, his best friend is Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is a free agent. I've told you many times that if Dre Greenlaw is going to be back with the 49ers, given the financial constraints that they have, that it's going to be on a make-good one-year deal. I love Dre Greenlaw. you love Dre Greenlaw, but he only played half a season, and I think that severely limits half of a game in the season, which severely limits his value. And although there was a video of him around Christmas, and he was asked, what do you want for Christmas? And he turned to the camera and kind of slyly said, money. If you play half of a game in an entire season, no matter how good you've been, and it's an Achilles injury, that's not going to equal a big payday. So if he wants a big payday, and maybe someone will give it to him, there's a lot of bad teams in this league and a lot of desperate teams in this league, and they might just give Dre Greenlaw the money based on what he's done before. But I don't see it. So I don't think he's leaving. I think the 49ers want to, but if he doesn't want to play ball, then I think we have a major problem. All right, two things, and this is going to go back to Sports Girl for life, and everybody's going to be in a better mood because of that. All right, Brian Schneider, who we've been calling for forever, and actually it was either a day or two ago that we talked about he should have been gone at midseason. Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure, likes him, but they were so bad in every aspect of special teams, and I'm not even talking about Jake Moody misses and makes and mental problems for Jake Moody. I'm just talking about fake punts, punt returns for touchdowns, just general breakdowns, all those kind of things that happen, momentum swinging plays that hurt the 49ers game in, game out, and then, of course, it finishes off with Arizona getting a fake punt, which led to a field goal, which that wasn't the deciding play in a 23-point loss, but it sure as hell didn't help. So Brian Schneider gone. Everybody can celebrate that. And Kyle was given an opportunity to say, yes, first-year defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen is going to be back, and declined, and he's going to meet with the media later this week. So I think this is great news in terms of, look, I have nothing personal against Nick Sorensen. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Talked to him maybe once during the entire season. But another reason besides giving up 40 and 47 to end the season, another reason besides 30 or more points after the bye 5 times and a 29 against Miami, not creating any turnovers over the last half of the season. So all of that on the resume to say you've got to fire Nick Sorensen. And then the second part of it is these are the defensive coordinators available. And let me add Gus Bradley, who's had a nice career, and they weren't good at Indianapolis, but if you think about the Seattle teams that were so great, it was Gus Bradley. Then Gus Bradley got a head coaching job, I believe, with the Chargers. And then Dan Quinn came in. So Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn. Quinn, of course, was in Dallas for years and now is the head coach in Washington. So Gus Bradley is available too. There's our good friend Robert Saul in the left-hand corner if you're watching on one of our platforms. Jeff Ulbrich was a terrible head coach with the Jets, but he's a former 49ers linebacker, and the 49ers think highly of him. In the right-hand corner, Dennis Allen in the left-hand corner, which I am not a big fan of, the left bottom, Saints former coach. I actually interviewed him for the last time as the Raiders head coach before Dolphins Raiders in 2014 when I was over in London. And he's just, I'm not saying he's not a good defensive coordinator. He's just kind of and boring. And maybe that's okay, but he is a quality defensive coordinator. I just don't think he's great. And then right there, Matt Eberflus, who we just saw with the Chicago Bears. And because you're not a good head coach does not mean you can't be a good coordinator. So some guys just aren't head coaches. That's just not their bag. But, Saleh got fired. Ulbrich didn't look good. Allen got fired. So on that list, there are 3 former head coaches, and then Jeff Ulbrich and Gus Bradley, a former head coach, is out there as well. So I just would be absolutely, positively amazed, and that happens to me. I would be, given that list that we just saw, and add Gus Bradley. So there are 5 high-quality defensive coordinators out there with experience. And in the case of, let me pop that up one more time. Let me think about this. Saleh's been to a Super Bowl. Has Eberflus, Ulbrich, those are quality defensive coordinators, I guess is my point. So if Kyle would look at that list, and obviously Robert Saleh, as we've been talking about for a long time on this show, Robert Saleh, to me, would be number 1. It wouldn't even be close. Robert Saleh would be the guy for me. He's already proven it here. He's got a relationship with Kyle. Kyle could just say, hands off on the defense. You got it, Robert Saleh. I don't need to really worry about this. And that would be amazing for Kyle Shanahan. And I think also they need to bring in like an overseer of offense. That would be amazing. Somebody that's a veteran, somebody that's available, maybe a coach that just got fired, that's just looking to kind of rehab themselves for a season, doesn't get an OC job. One of those type of guys. So an overseer of the offense, a new defensive coordinator, a new special teams coordinator, an easy schedule. And I said this yesterday, and some people were up in arms. I think they're going to win the NFC West in 2025. Somebody hit me Somebody hit me up yesterday in the comments after the show, and they said, how the hell could you look at next year and say that a certain team is going to win the division? That's crazy. And you're right, it probably is. But they're going to try to retain their own, and I'm going to play some stuff here for you shortly in just a second. I got to fix some audio, so I'm gonna fix some audio in just a second. We're gonna have to take a quick break, and then I'm gonna fix some audio stuff because we're getting feedback, and I won't be able to play the cuts until we get that fixed. So I'm gonna fix that, and then we'll get to that. But I couldn't believe that they would look at this whole situation and say, we're not going to get a new defensive coordinator. So that leads me to look at the NFC, or the NFC West, not so much the NFC. I'm not going to say in an offseason that the 49ers, until proven otherwise, are going to catch the Lions and the Eagles and the Packers and the teams that are ascending in the NFC. There's Minnesota, although I don't know that I'm completely sold on Minnesota, but let's just put them in there because they just had an amazing season of 14-3. So I can't assume the 49ers are going to be better, but just in looking at the NFC West and showing respect for the Rams, who have grown their, as we've talked about a lot, their offensive and defensive lines, Sean McVay, as long as Matt Stafford's around. We've talked about that a lot. So the Rams are ascending. Seattle won 10 games, and they really didn't know what they were doing. Mike McDonald was a young guy. Seattle just fired their offensive coordinator, so Seattle still, to me, ascending. John Schneider's a good general manager. I'll give him that. The Cardinals are the Cardinals. But if you look at just pure talent, as far as the 49ers, just pure talent, they're going to lose Mooney Man Ward. Dre Greenlaw is a question mark. I don't think Hargrave is going to be back. Deebo yesterday, and we'll play this for you, and it's what I've been saying for months, and everybody screams and yells at me, Deebo's going to be back, the cap number's too big. It just doesn't add up. And they almost released him last year, and Deebo is a bit cranky at times anyway, so I don't know how much I'm going to read into that when I play that for you, but he was asked directly by Eric Branch of the Chronicle, are you going to be back? And he said, yeah, but not in a very convincing way. And then he asked him a follow-up, have you talked to John or Kyle about it? No, I haven't. Very short interview. We'll play it for you. And that led a lot to think, well, Deebo's not going to be back. But that still doesn't change my opinion. If you have general health next year, just not the stuff you had this year, if you have general health next year, you replace the special teams coordinator, the defensive coordinator. You get somebody to not oversee the offense, just somebody who can say, hey, Kyle, what about this? What about that? You have even a decent draft. And you know what? Let me give you this for you. My ADD's kicking in, but let me give you this as more good news, because I gave you bad news. I said I had a lot of good news, so I gave you the defensive coordinators. That should be good news. And then the other thing I have is here is, look, here's another reason. Thanks to Tankathon in the 33rd team, as I'm flashing this up on the board, if you're watching or if you're listening on the podcast, you will not see this, so I'll do my best to explain. But most 2025 draft capital, you can read, Browns, Jags, Raiders, Titans, Patriots, Giants, Panthers, Niners. So the Niners are picking 11th, but they have the 8th most draft capital. So what that tells you is, you know this, that means you can move around, and the 49ers like to. So at 11, move up, move down, 43, 75, 100, 112, 137. So you're looking at 6 picks in the top 137, and the 49ers have done what? Amazing in the mid-round. So maybe the first rounder at 11 is not going to be great. You have Nick Bosa and hopefully Ricky Pearsall, and don't give me Mike McGlinchey because he didn't make it to a second contract. So, yeah, they have not been great in the first round, but they got a lot of picks. So that's moving up, that's moving down. Don't trade the fifth-rounders, Dre Greenlaw, George Kittle, etc., but they've done great in the latter round. So if the Niners do what they normally do, now in 22 and 23 they didn't, but they did get Brock Purdy out of the 22 draft. So the 22 and 23 drafts weren't great, but 24 was looking good, and I like having the 8th most draft capital. So does that make you excited? So I gave you the final standings thing. I gave you the worst record predictions. I gave you Fred Warner's wife saying Dre Greenlaw's gone, but not really. And then I gave you 2 good things. DC's available, which means Nick Sorensen can't survive, right? There's just too many veteran, good, quality defensive coordinators. Kyle Shanahan was given the chance to say, hey, Nick's going to be back. Didn't, which is a big red flag. So I don't think Nick Sorensen's going to be back. Brian Schneider's already gone. You have the 8th most draft capital, and as I've played for you before, we've talked about before, they have the easiest schedule in the NFL next year. If you're a team that was terrible this year, chances are the 49ers are going to play you. And the only bad thing about that is that if you have season tickets, outside of the teams in the division, obviously the Rams, the Seahawks, the Cardinals are just okay. There's a bunch of bad games. Bad for fans, good for team. I would rather say good for team. So I think they're going to bounce back. That's why when the guy screamed at me yesterday, what are you talking about? How could you possibly know about the NFC West next year? I don't know. Those are some pretty good indicators. Oh, and by the way, the 49ers have equity built up in the closet because, yeah, they had a ton of injuries this year, but they're generally good, and they've still got enough talent, and don't listen to the national media that tells you that the 49ers are dead, buried, and gone. How many times has the national media, by the way, done that to just about everybody, where they're just like, nope, not going to happen. Those guys, yep, they're done. Those guys are done. And then the Patriots come back, or this team comes back, or that team comes back. So the national media is not great at predicting when to put dirt on a team, and it's far too early to put dirt on this 49ers team. And I'll play this for you from locker room cleanout. Brock Purdy, I think, is going to get a deal done early. Again, I've told you over the last couple of days, it's absolutely imperative that they don't do their normal song and dance, which is let's sign this guy in training camp in July, August, and now into September, Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams. I believe that they've learned their lesson. Parag Marathe, who's one of the best in the business as far as massaging the salary cap and doing all those kind of things, they will get the Brock deal done early. Don't confuse that with they'll get the Brock deal done cheaply. That's not the case. They will get the Brock deal done early. If you listen to Brock Purdy, he wants it done yesterday, and exactly what I've been talking about over the last couple of days, taking all the receivers, going down to San Diego, wherever the case may be, throwing just constantly so they're on the same page. They didn't get that opportunity 2 years ago because Brock was hurt. They didn't get that opportunity last year. Pearsall was generally hurt. Brandon Ayuk was holding out. And there was confusion yesterday. Somebody hit me up on one of the social media platforms and said, what do you mean he hasn't been on the same page as Brandon Ayuk? What I was pointing out yesterday was he hasn't been on the same page, or wasn't on the same page with Brandon Ayuk last year because Ayuk was catching balls like he was putting up on Instagram like he's playing catch with some kid in the neighborhood. And everybody thinks that, well, they've thrown together before, but there's always new things to the offense. And you could tell before Brandon Ayuk got hurt, they were just not on the same page. They just hadn't thrown much. And you got to do it constantly so that you can read each other's minds. That's what football's about. Am I reading what you're reading? By the way, there's 300-pound men trying to kill me. I have a split second to make a decision. And a lot of these routes are, okay, inside leverage, outside leverage, not to get too deep on you, but the man covering me is playing inside average. I got to pop outside. So Brock Purdy has about 2 to 2.5 seconds to decide as he's watching, 3, 4, 5 receivers in a route tree, a route combination, and he decides as he's about ready to get killed, nope, yes. But that guy is playing inside leverage, so I got to throw the ball outside. He's reading 4 or 5 receivers while men are trying to kill him. And you're thinking to yourself, why do they need to be on the same page? Because they need to be telepathic. And if you haven't worked with Brandon Ayuk, you haven't worked with Ricky Pearsall, you haven't worked with a lot of the guys that had to come in because of the injuries, then you're not going to be on the same page. It's absolutely critical that Brock gets the deal done. They go throw together. They're talking, okay, when this happens, that happens. When this happens, I'm going to do this. They just didn't get that opportunity to do it. Then Ayuk got hurt. Pearsall, which I give a ton of credit, and you're going to love what he says, he actually wants to meet the kid that shot him. He wants to forgive the kid that shot him. I mean, this kid, I don't know if he's going to work out. The last couple of games were extremely encouraging. But me, at his age, what's he like, 22, 23? The maturity level there, I'd be like, to be completely honest, I'd be like, I never want to see that guy again. And if I do, he's going to be in trouble. Like, that's the kind of thing, most people, that's in their mind. This kid's like 22 years old going, you know what? I don't know what the kid has gone through. I'll play it for you. But he's just like, yeah, I want to forgive him. So anyway, there is, before we get to the locker room clean out, there is some stuff going on with the 49ers. I gave you bad. I gave you good. I explained all the other stuff. All right, back out to the, John Holmes is here. Wow, I thought he had passed away. Good morning, senior softball games. Let's light this candle. Let's see, how about those Sacramento Kings? They blew, what was it, 129 to 99 the other night? Woo! Kyle, good morning to you. Hello, John. Jesus is here. By the way, Sports Girl for Life, did I explain that well enough? The why isn't Sorensen gone? Are you feeling better? I am not from Oregon. I'm originally from Southern California. I did work up in Portland, though, at first 9:10 the game and then 7:50. So anyway, yeah, it was awesome. Uncle Leo, good to see you today. Greg, it is great to see you. By the way, first guest, I promised you today, that person came up with a sickness this morning. Maybe it's just me. Tomorrow, all of our good friend Guy Haberman is going to join us. We're going to talk about the end of the NFL season, the the end of the 49ers season and what's ahead. He is very popular on all social media fronts, YouTube and the such. He is awesome. Play-by-play voice, good friend of mine. Used to work with him at 95.7 The Game and have stayed in touch after all those years. So he's going to join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, so make sure that you join us for that. Harry Johnson is here. Good morning, Johnny. By the way, don't mind Johnny at all. You can address me in any which way that you're comfortable. I think my grandma was the only one who ever called me Johnny. My mom would occasionally, when I was really bad, call me Johnny, but I don't care. No big deal. Bucko Sports, good to see you. Are you a Ditch KMBR logged in here? Thank you very much, Bucko Sports. By the way, Bucko Sports, are you a Pittsburgh guy? I also worked in Pittsburgh, by the way. It was my son who was there. John Holmes, appreciate that. 49er Faithful, appreciate that. Jacob is here. Bad drafting with a bad DC. Special teams finally caught up to us. You're 100% right. A few days ago, we popped this up on the screen, and I redid everything for these new platforms that I'm on, but I'll just tell you that in 22, they got Brock Purdy, nothing else. In 23, it was a bunch of garbage. And then guys like Hargrave don't work out as far as free agency is concerned. You make decisions about trading Buckner, drafting Kinlaw, and people don't even realize you had the 13th pick. You traded back to 14 in Tampa with that pick, got Tristan Wirfs. What do you need right now? Probably a left tackle in the not-too-distant future. Definitely a right tackle. He's a Pro Bowl, all-pro tackle, and you could have had him instead of Kinlaw. And the rule there, or the thing learned by this front office in this draft, because everybody's saying you got to draft an offensive tackle, you got to draft a defensive tackle. We talk about trenches all the time. But what they really have to do is whatever great player is on the board that you have graded the highest is who you draft. And I know that sounds like drafting 101, but teams don't often do it. Like these two quarterbacks, Cam Ward at 1, and we're going to talk a ton of draft. I'm sorry. I'm just a weirdo and a junkie about it. But these two quarterbacks aren't the two best players in the draft. I said this yesterday. Cam Ward went to Washington State. There was no buzz. He goes to Miami, and everybody's like, he's the number one pick in the draft. I'm like, what? Or Shedeur Sanders, who, man, there are so many red flags on Shedeur Sanders, and I worked in Dallas with Deion, great guy, raised his kids well. For whatever people say about Deion, he's a tremendous guy. He really is. But his son, driving around in the cars that he does, maybe that means absolutely nothing, but he seems to me like he thinks he's pretty great, and the NFL is going to humble you really, really fast. And when you're cocky coming into the league, it's tough. And maybe he's just going to be that great, but I don't think Shedeur Sanders, and I've talked to some of the draft guys, I think he's probably like the 15th or 20th best player. But what happens is quarterbacks get pushed up. So Sanders and Ward, or Ward and Sanders, are going to go 1 and 2. Even though maybe that's not how they look right now. Somebody's going to trade up for picks. And then after that, you've got all these different positions. But if it happens to be, receiver, the big kid out of Arizona, if it happens to be, it would be great if it was like Banks, the big tackle out of Texas. I'd love to see that guy. Not to get too deep into this. I'm not going to go Krug on you to free agents and 7th rounders. But you cannot get locked into a position. And what the 49ers did when they traded Buckner, they said, well, here's Javon Kinlaw, and we need a defensive tackle, so we're just going to flip-flop that, and it's going to help us financially, and we're going to be fine. Oops. After that failed, you signed Hargrave with the money that you were supposed to give to Buckner, and it just went. So it's not an accident that Philadelphia, the Rams, all these teams who have drafted so well and signed the right free agents and changed their teams into bullies, which the 49ers used to be. It's just not. It's not any kind of a coincidence or, gee, what happened? Yeah, injuries were a major problem this year, but it's not everything. So there's my thought on all those things. Let me hit out to the lines one more time, and then we're going to take about a 2-minute break real quick because I got to figure out these, or I got to fix the audio issue that we're having, and then I want to take you into the locker room for the 49ers. I got some Dre Greenlaw. I got a great Caboose pistol for you today. So anyway, all that stuff. So again, welcome to our regulars on YouTube. Love having you guys around. We are live on Twitter as well, so if you got to leave, you're like, wait a minute, just hit us up on Twitter as well, at John Lund Radio on Twitter. We're live streaming there now, as well as Twitch, John Lund Unleashed on Twitch. So any of those places you got to go. Our home base is YouTube, and we'd love to get you to subscribe there, at John Lund Unleashed. So that's what we got going on today. Who else do we have in there today? Nick J, good to see you. Skills Report, nice to see you. 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐿, good to see you that as well. Who else do we got? Man, I love it. I love that everybody is in here today hanging out. Very, very cool. 49ers Faithful is here. Sports Fan is here. Joy P. Good morning to you, Joy. Joy is amazing, by the way. I believe it's 10 children, right? 10 children. And hopefully we're a good relief for her, where it's just like, oh, man, are you kidding me? So anyway, we gave you some good news. We gave you some bad news. All right, give me 60 to 90 seconds. Talk amongst yourself, and I will get the audio set so that we don't have any issues. So give me 60 seconds. Hang on. Let me throw this up here for you. Do. All right, hang on just a sec. All right, we are back. I apologize. I said 60 to 90 seconds. As people were saying, it was more like 60 to 90 minutes. We will have, I apologize, we won't have video today, but I will explain what everybody says, so hopefully that will be good enough for today. I apologize. We're on some new platforms. It's giving us feedback on the audio, so it's not playable, so we will get that done for you. But let me do this. I will explain everything, and hopefully it will be just as good. So again, welcome in. If you're just joining us on Twitch, X, YouTube, John Lund Unleashed, thanks for hanging out. Skills Report is here. Nathan is here. Bucko. Everybody's hanging out today on a Tuesday edition of the show. So let me go through everybody yesterday and kind of what were the relevant things to talk about. First of all, Brock Purdy, as we've been talking about over the last few days, you must have been listening to the show. I think that people were confusing yesterday because I saw all the articles that came out. I think they were confusing Brock because people have talked about a hometown discount. He's not from the Bay Area. He's from Arizona. I've explained this many times. It's not just an athlete's choice when their contract is up, especially when it's a quarterback, especially when it's $55, $60 million, near top of the market kind of money. The agent won't allow it because it's egg on their face if they don't get the big contract. The players union gets pissed off if you don't take the most money because they want to drive the prices up and up. And right now, Dak Prescott is highest paid at $65 million, and Brock's not going to get that money. Now, could he have gotten that money? Yeah, he could have gotten it at the beginning of the season when he was coming off the first couple of seasons. And as I've told you, this is one of the reasons why I think they're going to win the NFC West is because Brock Purdy's going to be better. Brock Purdy's not going to try to do too much. You heard that from Brock Purdy again yesterday, just with the players out. He's trying to do too much. I've said that many times. And now when it comes to money, the one thing that he did say that was very positive is he wants to be a 49er. He wants to get this done. He realizes he can't hold out. He said all the things that I've said, which is we got to get down and we got to start throwing the ball with everybody, and we don't want to be in this position again. And so while Brock Purdy is going to get a more than fair contract, and if I had to predict, and I might as well, it's going to be in the $55 million range. I've said this. Tua got 52. Trevor Lawrence got 55. People can disagree with me, but he's better than both of those quarterbacks. So, again, it's not how good you are when in the quarterback market. It's when your contract is up. He's a good quarterback who will get paid great money, and he's going to get a deal done because the one thing is that I haven't talked about, which is the agent does work for him. So at some point, Brock's going to just say, look, get the deal done, which, again, is not going to be confused for get the deal done cheaply. It's just get the deal done. So those positive things from Brock Purdy I feel really good about. I think that Brock is going to get a deal done. As I told you, Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, and let me just try one thing. I'm going to just try to play this, and if it gets too bad, then I'll cut it. But this is what Deebo said. It's too bad. Yes. Oh, see, I can't even do that. It's giving me feedback on that, so I'm not going to be able to do that. But as far as Deebo is concerned, it was a very short conversation. Now, sometimes with Deebo, just so you know, and I'll give you a story on Deebo. Sometimes Deebo can be the most engaging guy on the 49ers, really into it and everything, and then other times he'll just point blank say to your face, I don't trust the media, don't like the media, don't really want to talk to the media, and don't understand why you have to do it. It just depends on his mood, and a lot of people are like that. I'm not ripping Deebo. I'm just telling you 100% the truth and how it works with Deebo Samuel. Perfect example. Papa and I are down in L.A. at the Super Bowl. We probably did 14, 15 of these things, and this is no joke. If you go back to New York, and we covered the Super Bowl in New York, the Seahawks blew out the Broncos, and we're staring at these big murals of Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning going, we hate them both. But somebody had to win, so Seattle did. But anyway, I digress. So we're sitting in there in just a packed, by the way, like Marriott Marquis or something, the most packed, sardine-packed Super Bowl I've ever covered of the many, many, many that we've done. And it was awesome. We had Kevin Costner, we had Adam Sandler, we had all these different people because it was New York. It was really great. But usually what happens is that when a player sees a hometown radio station, they're pretty happy about it because they know they're not going to get the general old crap, and they're just like, cool, this is going to be cool. So we had Colin Kaepernick on. Kaepernick was really, really cool. It was before everything kind of blew up with him, but Kaepernick was really cool. But the guy that we weren't sure about was Alden Smith. And Alden Smith had just had the situation where he had the accelerator down and all the DUI stuff, and his handler comes up to Greg and I, and he says, just nothing on the DUI, nothing on the DUI. I'm like, yeah, whatever. First question out of Papa's mouth. So, Alden, you need some help for this substance abuse, man. That DUI, that thing against the tree, and the guy, his handler, is losing it. I mean, losing it, freaking out. No, this interview is over. And Alden was like, Alden put his hand up, was like, no. He's like, I earned this, man. We got to talk about this. It's cool, and was the coolest guy ever. So the reason why I bring up Deebo in that context is Alden could have been an ass and could have just said, look, I'm leaving. He could have stood up, walked away. I mean, there was, his handler wanted him to, but Alden sat there for 10 minutes, the allotted time when you're just doing this car wash, one guest after another, and Alden stood there, or sat there, I should say, the whole time, answered every question, was cool as hell. We gave him like a bro hug. We were like, dude, right on. So to put that in, we're in L.A., and Deebo comes around, and he was promoting like Old Spice or something. Now, to defend Deebo, it's late in the day. It's like 2 o'clock. I saw him there at like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's a long day. I get it. But he knows Greg. He knows me to a certain extent, but he certainly knows Greg pretty well. And it was like one word to an answer, one after the other, and Greg and I are just peppering him with questions, and like we're trying to be fun and have fun and everything. And then Deebo stands up, totally true story, and a guy who was a handler for somebody else walks up to Deebo and had a Deebo sweatshirt that you all know, the Bo Knows thing, the old ad campaign, Bo Knows. He had a sweatshirt on that said Deebo Knows, and it was black. And he had a silver Sharpie, and he said, could you sign this for me? And Deebo looked at him, kind of went, pfft, and walked off. And I was like, wow. Now, look, we all have bad days. You don't have to be great every day. My point in telling that whole story is to not say that Deebo's an asshole, because I don't believe that. He's not. He has very little use for media at certain times. And so when he was asked yesterday by Eric Branch, do you expect to be here? He said, yes. Have you talked to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan about that? He said, no. And that was the end of the interview. So I could either glean from that Deebo is having one of those bad days that he's had in the past, or that he's kind of relegated to the fact that he's not going to be back. Now, I took it as the latter, because if you are with me for any period of time on YouTube, I've said that a million times, and every single time I say it, people say I'm crazy. Pearsall in the slot, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk's back. That leaves Deebo as the fourth best receiver. You're not paying $24 million for that. So that's what I got out of Deebo yesterday. The Mooney man, I have to play this for you tomorrow because, again, we're having some audio issues. But the Mooney man story, and you can see this. I'll put this up on Twitter, and I apologize for not having the audio of it. Again, we have it, but we're just having some audio issues today that we'll have fixed after the show. But I've never heard this in 25 plus years of doing this, which is Mooney man came out and said, look, I got PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of California, because my daughter passed away in California. His wife's not even with him. She can't come to California. He's from Texas. He was asked yesterday, and he was very cool about all of this. He was asked yesterday, hey, how about the Cowboys? How about going home? He's like, yeah. He's like, it would be amazing. I think he's just being really nice, because we know that he's not going to fit in the salary structure anyway. They had a choice to make, Demo Lenore or Mooney Man Ward. Now, if Mooney Man had gotten into contract talks at the end of last year when he was a Pro Bowler, All-Pro, was one of the best corners in the league, 49ers probably would have signed him. Demo Lenore had another great season. Renardo Green looks really, really good. Played well against the Cardinals, the second rounder out of Florida State. This draft is looking really good. So Renardo Green's going to start. Demo's going to start. And that's the end of Mooney Man. So even without what he said yesterday, I'd be saying to myself, he's not coming back. But then he basically said his wife cannot come back to California. He has post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, from being in California. So we all think these guys like roll out of a locker, right? Oh, there's the robot, and they're going to go out there and they're going to play a football or a baseball or a hockey or a basketball game, and it's just not how it works. These guys have lives. So beyond the injuries of this year, we've talked about it a million times, the weird shit that went on, nothing was weirder or more sad than what happened with Charvarius Ward. So you look at him and you just say, he can't come back. He's not going to come back. He told us that yesterday. He was trying to be as nice as he possibly could, but he basically said, if my wife can't come back to California, he's been by himself. Why do you think he's struggled? Because he has a daughter that dies, less than 2-year-old daughter that dies during the season. His wife can't come back to California because she's so devastated by it, and this is the place that it happened, so she's gone. And he's going through this stuff by himself. Now, he's got a team, I understand that. But at the end of the day, you know, you're in this by yourself. And so he's sitting in an apartment just staring at the ceiling going, this is great. So he's not going to be back. The other stuff, George Kittle, and I'm sorry that I have to say all these great things about George Kittle ad nauseum, but for a season that was as bad as it was for the 49ers, and bad doesn't even begin to address it, George Kittle has just been positive. He's played well. I saw somebody put out an all-pro team yesterday, and they had Brock Bowers ahead of George Kittle. I'm like, dude, really? Like, he blocks, he catches, he's the leader of the team. Like, if you're going to put Brock Bowers there, and look, I love the catches. He's going to be a really good tight end. He may be one of the best tight ends of all time, but he did not play better than George Kittle did this year. He just had more opportunities. But Kittle does everything. And then for Kittle to play start to finish, even though he just played a half against the Cardinals, was amazing. And then he said this to Nick Wagner right after the game, and then he said it again yesterday. He wants to retire as a 49er, and if he had said that 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, no way. To me, he would have been one of these guys, as Brock is about ready to get paid, that there wasn't a place for him. You're looking at a tight end going, you can replace him. Why do you think the 49ers a couple of years ago, and this is, again, back to the draft, 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐫𝐿, third round, Braden Willis barely hanging on. Like, they've tried. They've tried to bring in guys. They tried to draft guys. It just hasn't worked at that position. They've tried not so much to replace Kittle, but to just give him a break and then maybe eventually replace him at 30+. But the tight end position isn't overly expensive. I know, for you and I, tight end would be like, oh, my God, pay me tight end money. That would be amazing. But it's not the money that other positions make. The key positions, obviously, quarterback, left tackle, corner, all the must-have positions, edge rushers, all that kind of stuff. So you can pay George Kittle, and I think that he showed this year, and he just said it again, I want to be a 49er for life. He wants to start and finish with the 49ers. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. I mean, I could see George in Nashville because he lives in Nashville. I could see him in Tennessee or something like that. But right now, he's such an important part on the field, and then what he showed this year off the field in terms of just, I'm going to be a leader. He was asked about that yesterday in the locker room. And he said what I had been saying for a couple of weeks. I'm a leader on this team. I got to play. I know I'm banged up. I know we're out of the playoffs. I know that we're not going to the Super Bowl, but I've got to do this. And so he showed, and if I'm the 49ers, he's got 1 year left on his deal, and we're talking so much about Brock Purdy. It's not that I'm going to put George Kittle ahead of Brock Purdy. It's just that, and I'm not going to put him on the same level as Brock Purdy because of the position value, but George Kittle's getting done. Like, to me, I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm saying, to me, you know, you got to juggle a bunch of stuff around like I constantly talk about with the 49ers cap, and they massage it as well as anybody, but George Kittle's getting done. I'm doing a George Kittle deal for what he showed this year. So that was one thing that happened in the locker room yesterday. Mooney, I told you about Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall was saying, and again, at 22, dude, at 22, I could barely tie my shoes, change my diaper. I mean, at 22, are you kidding? At 22, I graduated college, went over with a girlfriend at the time to Hawaii, was living in Waikiki, and decided at 22, you know what, I'm not ready for the real world. And I went and bartended on cruise ships for like 9 months. That's what I did at 22. I'm like, nah. And basically just hung out, had a really good time. The things that I did below deck on those ships are generally illegal. In fact, yes, in 49 of the 50 states, I think they're illegal. In Nevada, probably anything goes. But like 49 of the 50 states, what I was doing on that cruise ship was absolutely positively illegal. And yet at 22, Ricky Pearsall is going, yeah, you know that guy that shot me? I'd really like to talk to him because I don't know what's going on in his life, and I would like to help him get pointed in the right direction. I was watching that yesterday going, whoa, what? Like, I don't know that Ricky Pearsall is going to be great. He showed a lot of positive signs the last couple of games, the last couple of weeks of the season. But, I mean, for a 22-year-old kid, be honest, could you do that? Could you forgive? Like, you know what, I want to talk to the guy that shot me in the chest and tried to kill me. I mean, that was pretty amazing. I was watching that yesterday going, wow. So hopefully I have conveyed to you the nature of what went on, but I still want you to see these things. And, again, I'm getting frozen stuff on the front of me. So that's what's going on as far as the 49ers. I'm going to flip to the Warriors in just a second, but those who watch us on YouTube constantly know that we have a lot to talk about. I always will switch pages, or I'll switch topics, but I will ask you that first. If you want to go into the Warriors, they do play again tonight against the Heat at home. So I want to get into that in a second because I told you with them playing today, I wanted to discuss that. So let me make sure that everybody's got their questions out as far as the 49ers, and then I can move on. AJ Cruz says, Ricky is a better person than I for that. Yeah, I could never do it. I really couldn't. I don't know that I could do it today. I'm just not that mature. I'm not that forgiving. I can forgive a lot of things. I have a philosophy in life. We talk about philosophies on the show all the time. I have a philosophy in life, which is I'm one of those people that just automatically will give you the benefit of the doubt and we'll be friends and everything. But if you screw me, then that's it. Like, I don't forgive very easily. Some people are like, I'm not letting you into the circle. Wait. And then you prove everything, and then they let you into the circle. But at first, they're really difficult to crack. But with me, I'm the opposite. Like, yeah, come on in. Then you screw up. It's like you're out, and you can't come back in. So I love people who forgive. I'm just not that forgiving of a person. That's unfortunately, that's just kind of how I'm wired, and that sucks. For some people, I mean, if people close to you got to forgive them, but that's how I am. I let everybody in. If you screw me, you're gone. A lot of people are tough exterior. You can't penetrate anything. Then all of a sudden you let them in, and then they're cool. So I'm the opposite of those kind of things. Forgive. I understand that, but I just couldn't do what Ricky Pearsall did. So that's me. I could be 100% wrong and an immature jerk because of it. Paradapa is here. Don't let Jimmy leave the bay. Are you talking about Jimmy? You're talking about Jimmy Butler. All right, we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to Jimmy Butler in just a second because I do believe I don't have the. Oh, I do have. I can show you stuff. I just can't play stuff because we're getting double feedback on that. But we'll do that kind of thing. Tommy is here today. Joy, good to see you. Let's see. Anybody else? Any questions? Any questions on 49ers before I move on to Warriors? Not illegal in international waters. That's a great point. Now that I think about it, that is a great point, actually. I know what you mean with Captain Stab and Smiley Dan. I know exactly what you're talking about there. Pirate Lund. Arrgh. Yeah, the thing is that I've got to figure this out because when I really look at the screen, I close one eye, and so people give me grief about that. But you know what? I'm all right with it. I totally understand that. HR is the one who said not illegal in international waters. You might have a point there. Because the ships that I was on, you could gamble, you could do just about anything. So you're right. Although, like I said, below deck there were some things going on that I'm not even sure in international waters would be legal. And because Joy and other young ladies are in here, I am absolutely positively not going to talk about that. Junior says Kittle is the most important skilled piece on the offense. He does all the dirty work at tight end. Yeah, if he went to another team, I'm not saying it wouldn't be important. And I do think that George at some point in his life thinks to himself, especially as he gets older, I don't want to do all this blocking stuff, although I know he loves it. Maybe I could be Travis Kelce or Brock Bowers and catch 110 passes in a season. Let me see if I could do that. Because he could. I mean, that's the one thing is that he is active on every single play. And Junior brings up a great point, which is, okay, you're going to let Kittle go, and you've tried to replace him, and you've tried to draft guys in Latu and Willis and all these different tight ends that you've brought in, at least to be a backup to give him a break, and nobody can do it because Kyle expects George to do all these different things. And the greatness of George Kittle is if certain guys come into the game, you know what play is going to be run. Now, obviously, 3rd and 8's a passing down, all this kind of thing, so it gives it away sometimes. But George is so versatile, you don't know with George on the field what's going to happen. With a lot of teams, they have a pass-catching tight end, a blocking tight end, same thing with running backs, a guy who can pick up the blitz on 3rd down is your 3rd down running back. Like with George and a lot of the pieces on this offense, and the reason it works for the 49ers is they can all do everything. And if they can't do everything, then they're not on the field. Christian McCaffrey can block, catch, and run. Brandon Ayuk, when he's on the field, can block, catch, and run. George Kittle, he's on the field, block, catch, run. Like all these different things. That's what the 49ers want because then in their scheme, they're not showing you anything. Like what are the 49ers going to do? I don't know because all these guys can do everything. So that's why for receivers a lot of times it is difficult because it's like, well, Ricky can catch and Ricky can do this. Yeah, but if he doesn't do all the dirty work, he's not playing. That was one of the major problems, 2-3 years ago, and it was like, Ayuk's in the doghouse. Well, Ayuk wasn't blocking like he does now. Ayuk wasn't running precise routes like he's supposed to. He's like, you mean a 7-yard in? Maybe it's a 9-yard. No, it's not. It's a 7. That was the problem back in those days. Anyway, I went on to a tangent, and I have no idea where we were in that whole thing. What else do we got? Before we move on from 49ers, we get a little Warriors in here because they're playing again tonight. And I do want to address that whole thing about Jimmy. Will Sorensen take over on special teams? Some people have talked about that. And Joy P, thanks for bringing that up. Some people have said that Nick Sorensen, who's been a long-time really good special teams coach in Jacksonville and Seattle, that he would maybe go from defensive coordinator to special teams. That wouldn't shock me. I mean, you don't see that every day. A guy gets released, he gets released. I don't think he's a good defensive coordinator, but anybody's better than Brian Schneider as far as special teams is concerned, and he got let go. And I'll go back to, if you're just joining the show, I think Nick Sorensen is going to be today or tomorrow, because I think Kyle's meeting with the media, Kyle and John, on Thursday, I believe. I'll double check that for you, and we'll have the audio from that, because I'll have all this audio issue fixed. But that wouldn't shock me, because I know Kyle likes Nick Sorensen. He's been successful as a special teams coordinator. The thing against that for me, and I said this yesterday on the show, I want new blood in here. You know, I mean, not literally. You don't have to take an arm and be like, actually give blood. No one would want my blood anyway. It's very tainted. But in terms of bringing in new blood, that's what I said about Kyle Shanahan, who is a great offensive mind. If you want to bitch and moan about Kyle Shanahan and say the ridiculousness of him being fired, replaced, whatever, everybody, and I mean everybody in the league, runs some sort of a version of the Kyle Shanahan offense, which is the Mike Shanahan offense that Kyle Shanahan has tweaked. So if you don't think Kyle's good, why is everybody running a version of his offense? He's not any good. Okay. Well, players play, coaches coach. When it's convenient, we blame the coach. When it's convenient, we blame the players. But reality is Kyle Shanahan's really good at what he does. But if you're a regular on the show, you know he's not beyond reproach. And I've said this many times. He hasn't had a good season. Hiring Nick Sorensen, bad move. Keeping Brian Schneider beyond midseason, bad move. I think he needs a guy to come in here as an offensive overseer, a veteran, somebody that he trusts. I don't care if it's his dad. To just say, are we sure we're doing everything right, especially in the red zone? They got to look at everything. So I think that's an issue. But the reason I wouldn't want Nick Sorensen, and maybe he's a great special teams coordinator, maybe he's a great guy, and I'm completely wrong on this. I could be. I often am. But I just want new blood in the building, like a special teams coordinator that maybe you'd know, maybe you don't. And I know maybe it could be like Steve Wilks, and it's just totally not a fit. And that's why guys, and this is not just sports, this is business in general. It's an old boy network, and that's why it's so hard to break. A lot of times for women, minorities, people who haven't been around a long time, young people, unfortunately, in our country, because everybody wants to hire somebody they're comfortable with. And this isn't just a sports issue. This is a business issue. This is worldwide, actually. And it's like, I know that guy. So that if that guy screws up, I knew that guy and I feel better. Because you have to take a chance to bring in somebody new. That's just what it is. That's why you see retreads all the time in the NFL. Like, I have nothing against Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is going to be the head coach of the Patriots because Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, knows him. And he took a chance on Gerard Mayo and with a terrible roster and went, oh, my God, 4-13, that's unacceptable. Well, what did you think Gerard Mayo was going to do in a season? He's got to get his type of players in there, his type of personalities, all these different things. He's got to permeate his point across to his players. That doesn't happen in a year. So that's ridiculous. And he took a chance. It didn't work out. And now he's going to go to an old faithful that he knows in Mike Vrabel and feel better about things. That's how business works. So I don't blame Kyle because now he's out of his comfort zone. And he's like, damn. Okay, I fired Nick Sorensen as my defensive coordinator. I could have kept him on at special teams, but you know what? Lund was screaming and yelling on some dumb podcast and YouTube channel and Twitch and all that stuff that we should get new blood in the building. That's not a bad idea, so let's do that. And then the Steve Wilks thing happens where you're not aligned on the same page because you didn't know a guy. So that's why teams, that's why players, that's why business, everybody it's a retread. And you're like, why does this keep happening? Because somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. Teams like to trade with a lot of the same teams. I said this a few days ago. Buster Posey is having a hard time busting into the old boy network because while he was a great player, he's not a trusted baseball guy, executive front office guy, and they don't know what they're getting with Buster Posey. So if you've done a trade with a guy in any sport 3 or 4 times, and then you trust him. Hey, he's not going to try to screw me, all these different things. We feel comfortable together. We can talk. Okay, I will make a trade with you. You constantly see that. Now, I'm not saying you don't see trades where it's somebody who hasn't traded before, but many times when these insiders try to connect something, they connect it. Well, first of all, they hear it from agents, but then they connect it with, well, who's somewhere else? I'll give you a great example. Ran Carthon was fired by the Tennessee Titans today, the general manager of the Titans. I thought that Deebo Samuel would be a perfect fit on the Titans. They don't have great receivers. Deebo Samuel could be a culture guy in Tennessee. They have the first pick in the draft. They're going to take a young quarterback. Deebo could do certain things to take pressure off guys. Ran Carthon was here when the 49ers drafted him. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. Ran Carthon gives the 49ers a 4th-round pick. Deebo Samuel's a Titan. Well, Ran Carthon just got fired today. So is Deebo Samuel still going to be a Titan? I doubt it. That's how that kind of thing works. Every once in a while I make sense. Not often. All right, what else do we got? Anything else on the 49ers? Gizmo says, let's bring in Navarro Bowman. He was coaching linebackers with the Chargers. I don't know how good of a job he did. We can check into that and see that. But, back to my original point, which is bringing in new blood. Yeah, there's two sides of it. But I'd like to see a new special teams coordinator because I'd like to see new blood. I'd like to see a new defensive coordinator, as I showed you earlier on in the show. The guys who are available as far as defensive coordinators, if you just joined us, let me go back to that for just a second as I pirate into the camera. Draft capital, DC's available. There you go. These guys are available. You may not like Dennis Allen, and I don't. This is the same kind of a thing. It's got to be scheme friendly. So when you look at a guy like Matt Eberflus, who was a terrible head coach with the Bears, but would be a good defensive coordinator, does Kyle know him? Kyle trust him? Well, the top two guys on that list right there, Robert Saleh, I think he knows him. Jeff Ulbricht's a former 49er who the 49ers were interested in. So those two guys would seem to have the lead. Gus Bradley ran the Seattle-style offense that Kyle seems to favor. Now, he's a veteran guy, but there's a connection there. So do I think Dennis Allen or Matt Eberflus are going to be the next defensive coordinator of the 49ers? Probably not. They only put them there because they're established and they're former head coaches who, while not being good head coaches, probably would be good defensive coordinators. But the top two guys on there, Saleh and Ulbrich, And Gus Bradley, you ran a similar system. He was in Seattle in the glory days of Pete Carroll before he left for head coaching job, and then Dan Quinn took over. But he knows him. So those three guys, to me, that I just mentioned, the top two guys that I just showed you on that graphic, and Gus Bradley are probably the top three candidates because Kyle 2 years ago was burned, and that's why Kyle stayed in-house this time, because he went, I'm not having another Steve Wilkes thing. But the important thing about the hire at defensive coordinator is it has to be, and that's why I think it's going to be one of those veteran three guys, it has to be someone where Kyle says, I don't want to think about the defense. I want to concentrate on the offense, and I think that hurt him because he was looking over, and that's why they had Staley in the building as well, and everybody's pissed off about Staley too and fire him. I don't know what he did. I don't know what kind of a role he had. He was an advisor, and the defense was really bad, so yeah, I would clean house on that side of things, but people were blaming, which I don't think is the case. But he had a young guy, he had an advisor, he thought he had it covered. And that was part of the problem this year, is Kyle, 26th ranked defense in the league, 49ers, 26th ranked defense. So Kyle Shanahan, I'm sure, had his hand in that pie going, I don't want to do this. So one of those veteran guys he's going to try to keep, and he's going to say, take the defense. Special teams guy, take the special teams. And it's famously known, Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to deal with special teams. So all season long, when Brian Schneider's special teams were crap in the bed, Kyle had to poke his head in those meetings going, are we going to have another punt block this week? Is there going to be a punt return for a touchdown? Is there going to be a momentum-changing play that's going to lose us the game, Brian Schneider? So you want to get guys who it's like, look, I'm an offensive mastermind, even though people are questioning it. Can you take care of the defense, Robert Saleh? Can you take care of the special teams unknown guy or Nick Sorensen? Anyway, there's my rant on that. Shanny should fire himself. Look at Nurse Paul RN coming off the top rope. I just told you, I don't see it. I don't see Kyle Shanahan going anywhere. I've said this numerous shows, but if you're new to the show, Jed York wants to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin, and there's something to be said for that. Continuity is good. Now, among all of that continuity of those three coaches since, 1968? I mean, think about that. Three coaches since 1968. Yeah, you're going to fire offensive and defensive coordinators, but what's amazing about the Steelers is they've run the same 3-4 defense. You can go Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Andy Russell, all the way through guys like Greg Lloyd and all that. And then now you look at that team and you say, look at T.J. Watt and Highsmith. And, I mean, they've just that was their core. They run the ball. They have a good offensive line. They play defense. They always have edge rushers. They play a 3-4. They play a tough style like that city. That's what the 49ers want to be. We want to punch in the mouth. We want to keep it this way. We like this way. And I'm fine with Kyle Shanahan being here. It's just that, as we've talked about many times in the show, they forgot that they like to punch people in the mouth, offensive line, defensive line, and hopefully they can fix the majority of that in the offseason and be that team. Now, if you fire Kyle Shanahan, then you don't know what you're going to be. So I'm not on the train of fire Kyle Shanahan. I get it. Injuries are an explanation of this season. Now, 2-3 years from down the line, if they continue to be 6-11, yeah, it's going to be a problem. but it's not for now. I mean, I think that Kyle and John have bought themselves, I don't know, probably 3 more years, 2 more years. If they went 6-11 for 2 years, they'd probably get fired. But that's fine. AJ Cruz says, got to disagree, John. Deebo is not a culture guy. He's a what's good for Deebo first guy. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, AJ. All I'm simply saying is that I don't want to come across as saying that Deebo Samuel 100% of the time is an asshole, because that's not the case. Was he to Greg and I in L.A.? Yeah. Was he to that guy asking for him to sign his Deebo nose sweatshirt? Yeah. Was he short yesterday in the locker room? Yeah. But here's where I'll give Deebo credit, and even begrudgingly. During the season, he knew what was going on. They draft Pearsall in the first round. Jauan Jennings becomes not just third in Jauan. He becomes Jauan Jennings, great wide receiver in the NFL. He knows Brandon Ayuk's coming back. He knows he had a terrible season. He knows he dropped that ball against the Rams, that if he catches that, maybe we're sitting here getting ready for a 49ers playoff game. 6-11, one game. Probably not, actually. I take that back. And you're going to scream at me and yell at me, and that's totally fine. But the outcome of the season might be a little bit different. He knows all those things. And so he's standing in the locker room cleanout yesterday going, I know what they're going to ask me. And while it was short and sweet, I think we got the point. He hasn't talked to John and Kyle. He says he's going to be here, but what else is he going to say on locker room cleanout? No, I'm not going to be here. It's been great. He's not a free agent. I remember when Mike McGlinchey was down there when he did the locker room cleanout, he had a Notre Dame sweatshirt on the next day. Or no, you know what he had? Whatever his agency was. It was, I can't remember what his agency was, who his agents were, but it was like, if it was Wasserman Group or whatever, it's Wasserman Group. Like, to tell the 49ers, I'm not a 49er anymore. Like, everyone's wearing 49er gear. I don't play for the 49ers anymore. My contract's up. So right away, you knew that. But he said, Mike McGlinchey was a nice guy, but you knew right away, like, that dude ain't coming back. He's going to be too expensive. Deebo Samuel was wearing a 49ers sweatshirt yesterday, or quarter zip Peyton Manning or whatever it was, but he's got a year left on his contract, so he's not going to come out and say, look, I ain't going to be back. He's got a contract right now, and he's going to see what happens. But I think it's obvious to everybody what's going to happen. But where I will give him credit is a lot of other people would have just said, look, man, trade me. And, when his contract was coming up, he's like, trade me, and Kyle massaged it back, and that was still when Deebo was a really, really good player, but at almost $24 million, and what I just talked about with the receivers, I don't care what the cap hit is. Everybody wants to talk about the cap hit. Everybody takes cap hits nowadays, and the cap is going to continue to go up. So he's the 4th wide receiver on your team, but he was a professional this year when the writing was clearly on the wall that he wasn't going to be back. Jason says, no more internal hires. Like I said, if Nick Sorensen was named special teams coordinator, would I be pissed? No, I wouldn't be. JJ Rader, I knew you would get to this. I was waiting for this. Say no to Dennis Allen. He's had 2 opportunities as head coach. He's a good defensive coordinator, but like I said, I know Dennis Allen. I don't mean to keep hammering this point. I did the final interview that he ever did. We were in this big castle in London. It was amazing. And before they got on the buses, they're like, for the pregame for the Raiders, they're like, he's got to do it now. I don't know if they knew he was going to get fired or what, but so we do it in this big castle thing. And he had the personality of, this finger. Like, it was just like, you're pulling stuff out of this guy, and anybody who was a Raiders fan back then, he just had no personality. Personally speaking, this probably means nothing. I like fiery defensive coordinators. Guys that are yelling and screaming and jumping up and down. Chris Casseret, Robert Saleh did that kind of stuff. Offensive guys, I don't know why this is. I didn't make the rules in the NFL. I don't know why this is. Offensive coordinators are supposed to be calm and cool and call the next play and no big deal. You just had an 80-yarder, no big deal. All these different things are supposed to be calm and cool. You got to watch the next play. Defensive coordinators can pump their fist and get all pissed, and they're jumping around in training camp. That's what I want my coordinator to be. Dennis Allen is a flatliner. And like I said, maybe they'll hire Dennis Allen. I have no idea whatsoever. But as I go back to relationships, Jeff Ulbrich has a relationship. Saleh has a relationship. Gus Bradley runs a similar system. You start looking at that. I'm sure he knows Kyle. Kyle knows him. He was in Seattle for all those years. Maybe he's too old. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. I can talk ageism on here. I mean, I'm of a certain age. I'm very young. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to hire somebody that they know. And I don't think Dennis Allen is going to be that guy. Ulbrich has only been good when Saleh was the head coach. I agree with you, Nurse Paul RN. He was a terrible head coach. What did they win? 1, 2 games maybe? Danny, good to see you, Danny. Do you think Brandon Staley will be back? I just don't know what Brandon Staley did, to be honest with you. From the beginning, it was just kind of a, what does he do here? He's kind of an overseer of this, that. I would love to see that kind of a person on offense that Kyle would trust and respect. I think the thing is, and this is where I don't know if Robert Saleh would take this job or any of these guys, but Brandon Staley, I think, was trying to get on radars of teams. When you're associated with success, teams want to hire you, right? Oh, what was that? Like Nick Saban did that all the time. Remember Steve 𝐼𝐶, who's the head coach at Texas now, had a massive alcohol problem when he was at USC, admitted it, and then where did he go? He went to Alabama to rehab. He was the offensive coordinator. Alabama was really good. Steve 𝐼𝐶 got jobs, even though he was at the bottom of the barrel when he was at USC. And all of a sudden, he goes to Nick Saban, he rehabs him, and all of a sudden now he's coaching at Texas, and they're one of the best teams in the country. Same thing happened with Lane Kiffin. Same thing happened with, who's the guy that was at New England? Charlie, whatever his name is. I mean, all these guys kept going to Alabama to rehab themselves like, oh, my God, I've hit rock bottom. Nick, help me out. And it was not only guys who were offensive coordinators, it was guys who they were on the staff. And it was like, well, he must be good. He's at Alabama. He must have learned a lot. So then those guys would be rehabbed and they'd come back. Well, it's the same thing. You want to be successful. So if I'm Robert Saleh, do I think this defense, as currently constructed, can it be great? Because if it's not great, I'm not going to get back in the head coaching cycle. Dennis Allen's thinking the same thing. Ulbrich, I don't know about him. I mean, I don't know what he did in New York. I wasn't there, but from an interim standpoint, they were a mess. And as you said, they were much better when Robert Saleh was there. So the point is that guys are going to take jobs, especially ones who are former head coaches. Matt Eberflus is in that. Dennis Allen is in that. Robert Saleh is in that. They're not going to take jobs if they can help it. Now, maybe they're just going to take one because it's a musical chairs game. But in Robert Saleh's case, he's not going to take just any old DC job. He's going to take a job where he says the talent is there. I'm going to run a great defense for 2 years, and in 2 years I'm going to be back in the hiring cycle, and I'm going to get a head coaching job. I mean, that's what they're all thinking. And then when they get fired, they get like Saleh does, like $20,000 a day for the rest of his life. No, for like 4 or 5 years. So that's what's going on. Let me get back to it. Let me see. What else do we got on the old chat line today? Victor, good to see you. Staley is OC. You're getting me going for the 30-yard lines. Tommy, good to see you. Let's see. Smiley, Dan is back. Hurley Bird. I want to make sure I hit up everybody today. The Sentinels football channel, by the way. Very nice. What else do we have here? Hear me out. Oh, come on, Hurley. Rex Ryan for DC, or is he too caught up in his own fluff? I'm glad you brought up Rex Ryan. So he's delusional. I don't dislike him. If he did come here before the media, it would be tremendous content. I'm not saying he doesn't know what he's doing because he's been successful for a long time. And I'm not even talking about from a head coaching standpoint. But the thing about Rex Ryan is he's sitting on ESPN and he's trying to champion himself. I have a great champion coaching story in just a second. But he's trying to champion himself for the Jets job. And he's trying to say that he's a better candidate than Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Now, look, as I've said before, not every coordinator, because they're a great coordinator, means they're a great head coach. Because a head coach has to be leader of men, and he can't just be an offensive guy. Now, Ben Johnson will be like Kyle Shanahan and a lot of smart offensive coordinators. They're going to call their own plays, which is very difficult to do, especially first time around, as a head coach and an OC. He's going to do both. Really difficult. So maybe he won't be great. Maybe Ben Johnson is a great offensive coordinator who is not going to be a great head coach. I don't know. Rex Ryan is saying he's a better candidate. I don't see it. You've already had a chance to coach the New York Jets. He did get to a couple of AFC championship games, but he ended there, I think 26-33 I saw yesterday, with a losing record with the Jets. And he says that he's a better fit in New York than anybody else would be because he knows the fans, he knows the culture, he knows that really doesn't have anything to do with it, because what you're trying to do with the New York Jets is something that Kyle Shanahan gets very little credit for when he came here. You're trying to change the losing culture, which in sports is one of the most difficult things to do. I mean, there's hitting a baseball, there's all these different things. Playing quarterback, as I was just talking about, one of the most difficult things to do in all of sports is changing culture. When I see unknown guys take their first-time jobs, you're the same way. You know they're not gonna succeed. You're looking at them like Dan Campbell. Everybody looked at Dan Campbell the first couple of years, and you might not like the Lions now because they have the number 1 seed and all these different things. And now, if a team stinks like the Lions did forever, you don't have any opinion about it. You don't care. You only get hated when you're really good. So now all of a sudden people don't like the Lions and think Dan Campbell's this, that, or the other. But when he was talking about biting kneecaps and all those things, we're like, come on, man. Here's another loser coach for the Lions to throw on the pile, and then they're going to bring on another one. but he changed the culture. Now, Brad Holmes helped that, their general manager, by drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown and Brian Branch and Jahmyr Gibbs. And, I mean, it takes talent. So, obviously, if Dan Campbell doesn't have the talent, he's not going to be able to coach the way that he does, but he changed the culture in Detroit, which I worked there. It's impossible nearly, but he did it. And so that's, Kyle came here, and because the 49ers had success in the past didn't mean they were going to have it in the future. It was Jim Tomsula followed by Chip Kelly. The 49ers were at an all-time low. They were terrible. And so he changed the culture, which is not easy to change the culture somewhere. And that's, you got to give a coach credit for that. So Rex Ryan's trying to say that he can change the culture in New York. Well, he didn't really do it before. So why would you be able to do it now, X years later? There's no way he's getting that gig. Now, back to your original point, if you say that Rex Ryan can be a great defensive coordinator, maybe. But here's the other thing that you got to take into account. Egos. I've said many, many times, there's no way Jerry Jones is bringing in Bill Belichick or any big-name guys, and everybody midway through the season and the odds guys in Vegas said, Belichick's going to Dallas. No, he's not. Jerry Jones is an egomaniac. Did you see him at the end of another failed season for the Cowboys at 7-10? Hey, Jerry, would you ever step down from being the general manager of the Cowboys? No, I wouldn't. I love myself some glory hole. No, he won't. Now, he's GM in name only, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes like Stephen Jones actually doing the work for the Cowboys, but final stamp of approval most times goes to Jerry Jones, and he's going to get in front of the camera and tell you all about it. But Jerry Jones won't step down. He doesn't care. It's kind of an Al Davis situation. I don't care. My ego is gigantic. He likes having a Mike McCarthy as his head coach. Tried with Jimmy Johnson, got Super Bowls, but at the end it fell apart. I was there when Bill Parcells was there. Major ego versus major ego. Bill Parcells lost out in that situation. He likes to have coaches that he can control, and he also has the spotlight. He doesn't want to share the spotlight. It's Jerry's team. So after games, he holds court. He's not going to have an ego guy. And that how does that relate to the 49ers? Could Kyle Shanahan and Rex Ryan coexist? Rex Ryan has a massive ego, clearly. He's saying that he's the best candidate for the New York Jets. He has a massive ego. It would be about, Kyle, don't even come into this room. And while I said that earlier, that Kyle doesn't want to have to worry about the defense, if Rex Ryan is running your defense, you might have to worry about it. Now, look, he might do a tremendous job. But as I'm talking about relationships that you have with people, and that's business, that's sports, that's trades, that's all these different things, I just don't think that Kyle Shanahan and Rex Ryan would be a match. I don't see that. If we were on some dating app and you looked at Rex Ryan and you looked at Kyle Shanahan and we were playing that, we'd be like, that's not a match. Like, when you see people walking down the street and you say to yourself, they look like a couple. Yeah, that looks like a couple. Good-looking couple. I could see why they're together, all that kind of stuff. Like, you just have a feel for it. Yeah, it looks like a couple. I mean, when I'm walking down the street with my wife, who's very pretty, people say, what in the what? What the? That must be your brother. That must be your, whatever. It's never like, yeah, they look like a good couple. The woman looks great. The guy, ooh, my God. Turn the lights off. So, I just don't see Kyle and Rex Ryan as a match. It doesn't work for me. So I just went on a long tangent about one question. I don't see that at all. Junior, good to see you. Jerry is, there you go. Jerry's the modern day. Absolutely. He's the modern day Al Davis. Never going to happen. Massive respect for the tuna. Look at you, Sentinel. Yeah. Bill Parcells was incredible. He would turn we would all be around him. And then this is where I loved a guy like that. Like, he would scare you. He would intimidate you. He'd do all those things when the camera was on. And then the cameras got turned off. And I'm not saying I was on the inner circle. Don't get me wrong, Robert De Niro. I wasn't in on the inner circle of these guys because it was the beat guys and everything. But once in a while, I would hang around and kind of have my ear against it and I could hear it. So he wasn't talking to me. I don't want to misrepresent the situation. But the mics would get turned off, and Bill would kind of look around, make sure Jerry wasn't around, and then he would tell the story of what was going on. Like, this is the deal. This is what's going on. Like when Terrell, you might remember this is years ago, maybe 15 years by now, Terrell Owens was in Dallas and they couldn't find him and they feared the worst and all this kind of stuff was going on. And it was something around the lines of like Terrell Owens thought that the Cowboys didn't know what was going on in his life, and the cameras turn off and Bill Parcells says, I know where everybody is. I know where these guys hang out. I know where their girlfriend lives. I know their wife lives. I know their mistress lives. I know their kids go to school. I know, guys they hang out with. Like it's their job to do that. They have security. They know where guys go. So when everybody else was like, oh, I wonder about T.O. and this, and I wonder about T.O. and that, and Parcells turn off the cameras, Jerry leaves the room or whatever, and then Bill says, I know everything. So that's that. From that moment on, when coaches tried to claim ignorance, like that's not on me, especially like college coaches. I don't know. I don't know that guy was doing that. I don't know that guy was doing this or this or this. Yes, you did. Like You know exactly where these guys are. You know exactly what they're doing. You know the chances that you take when you're drafting certain guys or recruiting certain guys. And then they claim ignorance. And they tell the guy, too, look, we're taking a big chance on you. And if you screw up, I'm claiming ignorance. I didn't know where you were. I didn't know what you were doing. But then when it comes to situations like that, it's like, I know where they are all the time. That was a bit of a tangent. All right, what do we got here? Let's see. Who else? Any more questions on the 49ers? What's up, Jay Lund? Good to see you, man. Antonio, it's good to see you today. Other than the sound quality, I think the first day on these different platforms worked out well. I will have that worked out tomorrow. We cannot have issues here on the show. That's completely unacceptable. I feel like Brian Schneider today. I'm very upset. Victor, good to see you in the Pacific Northwest. Is it raining? It probably is. Let's see. Anybody else having Starlink issues? Is that an Elon deal? Is he having some problems? All right, a couple of more things. I know we've gotten stuck on the NFL for a long time, but it demands our attention constantly. But on the chalkboard, if you're new to the show, it says episode 27, and it goes down there, 49ers Lockers, which I'll have that fixed tomorrow. Real quick, Dubs are back, taking on the Heat. And let me pop something on, because I have a Jack Flaherty, and I have something to make you feel good about Jack Flaherty and about Pete Alonso, but let me just pop something up that we can use, which is this. If you see that right there, Brooklyn Nets forward Cam Johnson, been the talk of the trades, blah, blah, blah. And then it talks about Bulls center Nikolai Vucevic, who the Warriors of Tabak talked about. Now, again, let me just give you a little bit of reporter intuition, having done this a long time. So essentially what's happened is, and the Heat are coming into town, so let's talk about this. Jimmy Butler was a hot commodity as far as the Warriors are concerned. I told you 10 days ago that there was no way that the Warriors were going to take on Jimmy Butler, and then it got worse and worse and worse. And so the Warriors, there's just not a match there either. He makes $50 million. He's 35 years old. He's going to the last year of his deal. And if you have intuition on this whole thing, Jimmy Butler doesn't want to be traded from the Heat. Jimmy Butler does not want to go chase a championship with any team. Jimmy Butler's pissed off at Pat Riley and the Heat because they won't pay him. He's 35 years old. He feels like he's given a lot to the organization, although they haven't won championships. They have gone to the finals, Heat culture, all that kind of stuff. Jimmy Butler is kind of the face of that kind of thing and that talk. But when Pat Riley went after him and told him to sit down and shut up, Jimmy Butler didn't like that. And then when Pat Riley told him, you're not getting an extension, he really didn't like that, and that's when he started acting up. So what does Jimmy Butler want? Well, he wants to trade to a contender. No, he doesn't. Jimmy Butler is about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler wants an extension. It's about money. As we talk about often on the show, everything is about money. Everything. So Jimmy Butler is like, oh, I want to go chase a championship. I'm Jimmy Butler. I'm a leader of a team. He's Jimmy Butler, a 35-year-old guy who wants an extension and a last payday. That's what Jimmy Butler wants. That's why he's pissed off about the Heat. Why would you want to leave the Heat? There's no state income tax in Florida. You're living on South Beach. You have a good organization with Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. Why are you leaving the Heat? There's no explanation. The Heat, the Eastern Conference, they're not great in the Eastern Conference. I understand that. But going to the Bucks, going to the Warriors, going to the Memphis Grizzlies, are those teams going to win championships this year with Jimmy Butler, given what they'd have to give up? I doubt it. So is Jimmy Butler in a better situation? Potentially. But he's not going to the Celtics or anything like that. He's not guaranteeing himself a championship. Jimmy Butler wants to get paid. And it's clear that the Heat are not going to pay him, so he doesn't care about no state income tax and living on South Beach and a quality organization. I understand guys who don't want to be in a bad situation. I'm not against it. Everybody's mad and angry. Just stay with your team. It doesn't work that way anymore. Bird and Magic and Jordan and Kobe, those things are all great. I covered teams in that generation, in that time in the NBA, and it was awesome. And I liked when guys didn't like each other. But the reality is they're all doing chunky soup commercials. And they're all buddies, and they all have similar agents, and they all want to hug. Back in the day, Draymond Green and LeBron James, or LeBron James and Steph Curry being friends? No way, man. Isaiah Thomas hated Magic Johnson. Now they became friends, but Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, that's a better example. They didn't like each other. Magic would never go to the Celtics. Bird would never go to the Lakers. They wouldn't get together, but it's just a different era what's going on now. So that's just kind of how it is. But Jimmy Butler is parading himself as a guy who wants to be traded to a contender to win a championship when the reality is he's 35 and desperate to get a contract. The Warriors want nothing to do with that. So that's number one. That's Jimmy Butler. As far as the other guys, it's so funny because all these names came out. Cam Johnson, who's a nice player, was a nice player on the Suns. But don't get confused with guys who score 20 points per game on bad teams. I told you when Dennis Schroeder came over that he wasn't going to average 18 points and 7 assists in 34 minutes. You're going to a good team and you're going to fit in. He was on a bad team and got numbers. Right now, Cam Johnson's on a bad team and he's getting 21 points a game. If Cam Johnson was on the Warriors, he'd be part of the rotation. He'd play 24, 25 minutes and he'd average 14 points a game like he did in Phoenix. So that's not going to put you over the top. So we've discussed ad nauseum far too many times whether you trade Jonathan Kuminga or not. Well, you can't now because he's got an ankle injury and probably will be healthy enough by the trade deadline, February 6th. So, if you wanted to trade him, you could. But who are you going to trade him for that is going to bridge the gap and make you great? Now, it's not just about this year for me, even though Steph Curry has done so many great things for the organization that you would think to yourself, well, I'm Joe Lacob, I kind of owe him that. But you don't owe him trading for 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. You don't owe him trading for Brandon Ingram, who's not a clear number one into the future and wants an extension and is in the last year of his deal. There's issues with everybody out there. We've mentioned Zion Williamson a ton of times. He can't stay healthy. I think he'd go to a good organization, and I think we'd be much, much better. But are the Warriors willing to take that massive chance and trade Jonathan Kuminga, who has shown so much lately? Probably not. So then the word comes out today from those in the know, Anthony Slater and others who cover the Warriors, my friend Marcus Thompson, that they're not going to do that they don't see a trade now. Now, again, this is where reporter instinct kicks in. When I hear all these different rumors of all these different guys, I generally think it's an agent trying to push that look at all these teams that are interested in Jimmy Butler. Look at all these teams that are interested in Brandon Graham. That's an agent saying, there's 5 or 6 teams. Oh, you better, all these kind of things. So that they can make their client a hot commodity. So when I hear all these different things, I generally don't believe them because 99% of the time it doesn't come true. But when I hear a team say, you know what, we just don't see a trade out there, and that's the report now with the Warriors. Yeah, we just don't see a trade. Brace for a trade in 48 hours. I mean, that's generally what happens. Now, do I think that's going to happen now? No. I think it's going to be something near the trade deadline because between then and now, what's today? 7th, 8th? I can't keep things straight. But between then and now, or now and then, I should say, I think there will be a trade now because when I hear rumors, I think, When I hear that the team is out and they're done and they're not going to, I just don't see a trade. That's not talking to the fans. That's not talking to the media. That's talking to the rest of the league. You're not making us any offers. It happens both ways. Pat Riley at first said, Jimmy Butler is unavailable. We're not trading Jimmy Butler. The next day on the show, what did I say? I said, they're trading Jimmy Butler. It just means that Pat Riley hasn't gotten the right offer yet, and he's keeping leverage on the player, and he's saying, you know what? It's just, we're not trading Jimmy Butler. We love Jimmy Butler. Well, let's try to keep leverage up. That doesn't mean you're not going to trade him. He knew that Jimmy Butler was being an asshole behind the scenes. It just went public recently because Jimmy Butler basically stood in the corner and went like this during a game. Like, what? What's going on? There's a game? Like he did that, and then it got blown out of the water. And that's where, again, you got to walk that fine line if you're an executive, because if Jimmy Butler does that in a game, now you lost all your leverage. But I knew 2 weeks ago Pat Riley was trading the guy because he said he wasn't. And now the Warriors are saying that they're not going to look for a trade, which means they are. Does that make sense? I hope so. We can do bets on this. I could be 100% wrong and crazy, but that's generally how it works. Let's see. What do we got? The Sentinel symbol. MJ wanted to kill you, then eat you. Yeah, absolutely. Positively. Lucky Luciano. I love it. Don't trade Kuminga. Worst mistake ever next to trading C-Web. C-Web, you know that. He kind of forced his way out and was an ass, and Don Nelson, that was, again, there's a chemistry issue for you. Yeah, the way Kuminga's playing, and Jacob says keep Kuminga, trade Draymond. Draymond's not going to get traded. although I don't necessarily disagree with you. And I'll play the audio tomorrow, and it might be past its prime, but I'll just say this. I don't have to play it. There's another HR saying trade Draymond. I'd love to know your opinion on Draymond, whether you're watching on X, whether you're watching on YouTube, which, again, please subscribe on YouTube at John Lund Unleashed Pod. Make sure that you subscribe on Twitch if that's how you're watching today, at John Lund Unleashed. But the interesting part to me about the whole thing with Kuminga is I look at his maturation process. I always say that it's not going to match up with Steph's, but I look at it now and I say, there's a reason why guys are on the trade block. So I think to myself, all right, maybe Zion Williamson. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say there's no friggin' way that I'm going to do a Zion Williamson deal, and I understand that. Now, back to Draymond for just a second. I lost my train of thought, and then wait a minute. I was talking about Draymond. The reality on Draymond over the weekend, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, no matter how you're watching. Hit me up on a text. By the way, you can always hit me up on Twitter, at John Lund Radio. It's the one I check the most, or the comments section on YouTube, at John Lund Unleashed. I also have a podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. I wasn't able to play this because we were having some audio issues today, but I will play it tomorrow, and I want to discuss it with you. But you know what I'm talking about. When Draymond over the weekend gets the technical foul and continues, and this is any game, to chirp at the official, and then afterwards it's like, oh my God, what? I only said boom during three-pointers, like you're so innocent. And then he said after the game, Jonathan Kuminga got an elbow in the game before he got hurt. And Draymond said, if I blow on somebody, it's Draymond Green. People have said this time and time again, but I think it's time to revisit it. You've earned all of this. You've earned all of the reputation. So no matter during the broadcast who's like, oh my God, if Draymond touches someone, he'll get a foul call. Look, he's earned the reputation. Just like you earn the reputation in a positive way, and I love to go outside of sports when we talk about things. Anybody who has a positive reputation, most of the time, I shouldn't say anyone, most likely they've earned the reputation in a positive sense, right? In a positive sense, you've earned your reputation. In a negative sense, you've earned your reputation. You are what you put down. So Draymond Green, and everybody's got the highlights on YouTube and everything, and all the things, even though he's on the Warriors, all the things he's done in the past, and these referees are human beings. I don't know if you knew that, but referees are human beings. Well, I don't care how professional they want to be. If Draymond Green has constantly throughout his career screamed you down, yelled at you, disparaged you, which he's done, and disrespected you generally as an official in this league, why would you ever give him the benefit of the doubt? Why would you ever? I mean, I try to live my life, believe me, I'm the opposite of a saint. I'm not giving anybody any advice. Don't follow my advice, whether it's sports or anywhere else. Now, having said that, I live my life with a general rule of don't burn any bridges. People have done really asshole things, and I still go, no problem, no problem, no problem. Now, not with everybody. I have issues with some people, but generally speaking, I have good relationships with most people. I've left jobs, never burned a bridge. I mean, that's what I was taught, and it doesn't do you any good to do it. Now, in the moment, when you scream and you yell, you tell your boss to F off, and you throw everything in his face and all that kind of stuff, and you stomp out of the place, and then you think, a couple days later, I probably need that reference. I probably shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should apologize. Like in the moment. But Draymond Green is always in the moment. And this old excuse of that's how Draymond has to play. Draymond's got to play that way. Draymond's got to play on the edge. Wasn't it just a year ago? Remember when he got all that therapy and got rehabbed really quickly and then came back and he was going to be a new guy? Remember that guy? Doesn't seem like it to me. Now, again, in saying any of this and all of this, does not mean I don't respect Draymond Green. Does not mean that I don't think he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Again, if you're new to the show, I try to keep everything between the lines, right? Court, ice, field, whatever the case may be. I keep everything, at least that's my attempt, to keep everything between the lines. So this isn't a personal shot at Draymond Green. I'm talking about Draymond Green on the court. I don't know what kind of a father he is. I don't know what kind of a person he is. I don't know what he is away from the court. I don't know. It's not really my responsibility or job unless it, turns into some kind of a situation that bleeds in, and then I got to talk about it if it's a personal thing or something he's done. But to give Draymond Green a ton of credit, he hasn't done any of that kind of stuff. So he's not a liability as a person or anything like that, and this is not a personal shot at him. I'm just saying between the lines on a basketball court. He doesn't have to play that way. You can play with an edge. We all know this. you have to make alterations in life in the way that your personality is. You can be wild and crazy, and you can have tons of tattoos, but you're not going to be a banker that way, and that's fine. You probably don't want to be a banker. You probably don't want to wear a suit. But the reality is that's the way things work. So for certain jobs, certain places, you got to act certain ways. You could be the wildest person ever, but if you have a certain job, you have to adhere to whatever that, unfortunately, you have to adhere to whatever the standards are for that job. If you're a rock star, it doesn't matter. If you're a professional athlete, it doesn't matter. You make all this money, you do all these things, you're going to get second chances if you have talent. That's just the reality of it. But as far as his on-court antics are concerned, he's done a lot of great things. He's a great basketball player. I cannot deny. I don't know how many championships, if any, they win without Draymond Green. But I know he's lost them some, too. I know that when he got upset with LeBron James was baiting him, and they lost a championship. I know that last year they could have been a hell of a lot better if Draymond Green didn't. I think they're definitely out of the cellar of having to play into play-in games if Draymond Green doesn't miss, what he missed, 21 or 27 games. And now it's just back to the same old antics, and then he goes to the locker room afterwards and says, man, they're just picking on me. Man, if Draymond Green blows on somebody, Draymond Green gets, yep, you've earned that reputation 100%. Because you've screamed at, berated, disrespected officials for so long, and then you expect them to give you any kind of benefit of the doubt? In what world is that reality? Yeah, you know what? I've been a total asshole to you for over 10 or 12 years since I've been into the league, but man, you got to give me the benefit of the doubt. What? That's why players, do you see some of the best players in the league and how they treat officials? Luka Doncic doesn't. There's far too much complaining in the league as a general rule. But a lot of the best players, Kobe Bryant did this, Michael Jordan did this, they know the officials' names, they talk to them in a certain context, in a certain way, and guess what? They get calls. Like, everybody thinks it's a superstar thing. The superstar. Let's go back to about, 20 or 30 minutes ago, I forget, when I just talked about relationships. Relationships, it's human beings that you're talking about. If you scream and yell at them constantly, why would you get the benefit of the doubt? In any way, shape, or I'm not even talking about Draymond Green. I'm not even talking about sports. Why in human nature would you ever get the benefit of the doubt if you treat someone like shit constantly and then you expect a favor? So if you have friends, right, and we all have that one friend that is just, we like him and everything or her, and they're a party friend or whatever, but that's not a ride and die friend. Like, you're not a ride and die because I've seen it. Well, it's the same thing. You get back what you put in. I know that that sounds kind of stupid, but you do. So if you're going to treat people like that, what you're going to get back is disrespect too. And that's just the way it is for Draymond Green. So it's not a personal issue. I don't know if he's a great father, great person, any of those kind of things. I don't know him on that level. But as far as a basketball player, you don't win any championships probably without Draymond Green. He's a great player. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best glue guys in the history of the game. History of the game, totally different. Not a scorer, not, all the stats and all these kind of things. They're not going to show the impact of Draymond Green. I got total respect for his game, what he's done, and what he's meant to the organization. But in terms of the other side of things, and the only reason I'm on this tangent is people were saying that, trade Draymond Green. They're not trading Draymond Green because he's kind of the muscle behind Steph Curry, and as long as Steph Curry's here and as long as Draymond Green can play at an effective level, he's going to be here because Steph Curry wants him to be here. They're not going to trade him. But what I saw over the weekend when he berated officials constantly, wouldn't shut up, act like an immature child, and then goes to the locker room and says, Draymond Green can't even blow on anybody, and he'll get a foul or he'll get a this, because he was talking about Kuminga getting the elbow. And he's like, he went to the official. Then he said, all I was doing was yelling boom when I hit threes and I got a tech. Yep, it is the Draymond Green rule, and they're earned. All right, I'm done with that. You could be mad at me about it. I'm just simply saying that I'm not ripping the basketball player. I'm ripping the guy between the lines who says that he can't play any other way. And that's just not true. If all of us just said, that's all, in my job, I got to be crazy and wild, then cool. Then go and be a rock star. Then you can do whatever you want. Be a professional athlete. You do whatever you want. But you're going to get back how you treat other human beings. And you say to yourself, how could that possibly be? They're supposed to be professional. Are you being professional on the court when you berate them constantly and won't shut up and act like a child? Then you're just going to get that back. You have earned those things. So anyway, what else do we have today? Have I done yet? I'm completely on this thing. Great point. Huge ass. Huge ass. That is awesome. Okay, that's going to be my new name. 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐿 says Eddie is 𝐬𝐻𝐸DY is what you're saying. I said Eddie. 𝐬𝐻𝐸DY is not afraid of Draymond. He's a monster. Like, I don't know who would win in a fight between those two. And I get what Draymond was doing. Again, you got to read between the lines sometimes. When he was asked in that very same media session, what do you think of 𝐬𝐻𝐸DY? He says, he play in the NBA. He play in the NBA. Like, he's disrespecting the rookie. That's just the way it goes. Until you prove and are beyond your rookie year, it's not just rookie hazing on your own team. It's rookie hazing throughout the entire NBA. He's not going to respect him. I get it. I don't think Schroeder is the problem. Let's see, what else do we have? No. It's interesting when you go with Draymond because a lot of times, and we've said this for years, if he wasn't on the Warriors, you'd hate him, and I think that's 100% true. And again, I'm not hating on Draymond. That's not what it is. It's just that act is like, oh my God, really? Like after the game, like, oh, poor Draymond. He hasn't earned any of this. Man. All right, what else do we got? Is that about it for today? I apologize for the issue where we had to take a quick break and to try to work out the audio issues. I will 100% get that fixed so that we can play all the... Oh, let me do one more thing. Sorry. We've jumped around with Niners, tons of Niners today. Got a little bit of Warriors in there as they take on the Heat. But there's two things. Now, I can't play the audio. I'll do it tomorrow. But just to kind of give you a thing before I flash this up on the screen. So, Jim Bowden of MLB Network was saying on MLB Network Radio 48 hours ago, 2 days ago, he was on his show. I'm not exactly sure what time it's on. But he was going on this whole tangent of, look, the Giants just need to sign Jack Flaherty, of course, who was with the Tigers at the beginning of last year, then with the Dodgers, lots of years in St. Louis. Southern California guy, so he's a West Coast guy. They need to sign Jack Flaherty, which I'm not against, and they need to sign Pete Alonso, call that a winner, add that to Willy Adames, and they're back in the conversation in the NL West. He said if they don't do that, then they're not in any kind of conversation. I agree with that. They need a Lamont Wade Jr., no offense, but they need to upgrade either in right field big or at first base big. Everywhere else seems to be set. They need a clear number 2 starter. It's not going to be and cannot be Robbie Ray. There are other trades they can make, Luis Castillo and others. You have to give offense to the Mariners, and it doesn't seem like the Giants would have any to spare. But then this was an interesting, SNY is out of New York City. Pete Alonso will reportedly, quote, almost certainly get an opt-out short-term deal, unquote, in free agency. Now, that sounds like that could be a giant deal. The only thing against that would be if I'm Pete Alonso, because a lot of people saw this yesterday and were going, oh, my God, it's got to be the Giants. Now, first of all, Flaherty would be nice. Maybe Buster's working on some sort of a trade. That would be the only reason why I wouldn't think they would trade Flaherty. He's a West Coast guy, pitched well last year, has a track record in St. Louis of pitching well, pitched well for the Dodgers in the playoffs, so Flaherty would be good. But let's keep this on Pete Alonso for just a second. Right-handed power works in this ballpark, especially the kind of power that Pete Alonso has, and there's an opening at first base. There's no question about it. Pete Alonso on a short-term deal, Bryce Eldridge long-term. But what Pete Alonso would want to do in a short-term deal, probably a one and then an opt-out, kind of what like Blake Snell had last year, one then a player option, or maybe one and a mutual option, however that would work. But what does Pete Alonso want to do in that 1 year? 3, 2, 1. He wants to hit a bunch of homers, put his market value as high as it possibly can be. Is this a ballpark for that? Probably not. So would Pete Alonso come here? Maybe. Willy Adames did. But Pete Alonso's in a different situation. He wants a 1-year deal, high AAV, and the most important part for him, with Scott Boras being his agent as well, is to say, where can I go and hit a ton of home runs? A ton of home runs. And as I told you, it's about money. It's not about, hey, I'm Pete Alonso, can I win a World Series? I mean, that would be nice for him. But he wants a big, fat contract. And so he's going to go to a place, if he's going to do a 1-year deal like this suggests, he's going to go to a place where he can hit a bunch of home runs. So that doesn't sound like it's here, but maybe. I'm just saying there's good and bad news when I saw that. I'm thinking, okay, what short-term deal works for the Giants because if he plays here for a year or two, then Bryce Eldridge is ready. That makes a lot of sense. Pay him high AAV. The Giants seem to be allergic to long-term contracts, whether it's pitchers or otherwise. I mean, Willy Adames signed a great deal, but it was, 7 and 182 or 6 and 182? I think it was 7 and 182 for Willy Adames. They don't want to go double-digit years in position players. They don't want to go beyond 4 or 5 years for pitchers. I completely understand those things, but it's one of the reasons why they are where they are, but they want to be smart financially. It's their money, so that's what they do. But Pete Alonso for a year, probably with an option year, mutual, whatever. Yeah, that makes sense for the Giants. Right-handers can hit home runs in this ballpark, especially with the ridiculous tower power that Pete Alonso has. But if I'm thinking logically about Pete Alonso, I'm thinking, why would he want to play in this ballpark for the 1 year in which he's trying to maximize his stats so that he can then get a long-term deal? Wouldn't make sense from Pete Alonso's standpoint, but I could be wrong. So there's that. Tomorrow I will get on the Caboose pistol, the Sweet Clean family friendly Caboose pistol. I have two really, really good stories. You've probably seen the guy stuck in the Waymo. That's one of them, and I have another one. We do the Caboose pistol, and I have a fancy open, but again, audio is kind of screwed up today, so tomorrow we'll do that and have a lot of fun tomorrow. Nate, Jacob, Victor, tell me, Macchiano. Yeah, I think I got that right. HR, good to see you. Lots of people in the chat room today. Hope it worked out on X. We were on X today as well, and also we were on Twitch today. In addition to YouTube, and please subscribe on all those places. On YouTube, it's at John Lund Unleashed. On Twitch, it's John Lund Unleashed. On Twitter, it's at John Lund Radio. So I hope you enjoyed the show today. I don't know if I can play audio out. Let's see if we can play audio out today, or if it'll echo. No, it's not echoing. Very nice. I could have played some Caboose pistol open. All right. What do we got for time? It doesn't matter. It's almost 10 o'clock. Hopefully you have a tremendous day. Give me feedback, man. If you love Draymond and you think I'm a jackass for those thoughts, cool. Any kind of 49ers thoughts, if I didn't get to them and didn't get to your question, at John Lund Radio, you can hit me up there on all social media, right here in the chat. Hit me up there after the show. What else? Podcast, if you missed any of the show. Podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Thank you for joining the community. We appreciate it. Love it if you join the YouTube channel at John Lund Unleashed. Have a tremendous Tuesday. Any tech issues we'll have fixed up tomorrow. Have a